Private First Class Murphy, Muff, Delgado has never liked rules, especially at the AUS Command Academy, where every test, trial, and tradition seems designed to humiliate Earth cadets. When a blindfolded stunt in the galaxy's toughest obstacle course smashes the Academy record, Muff earns not respect, but a promise. One mistake, and he's gone. Now the Academy's top officers, alien tacticians, and even a mischievous scientist are determined to break him with the hardest trials they can imagine, mech battles, hostage negotiations, and mind-bending psychic tests. But Muff's chaotic thinking, stubborn humor, and refusal to open his eyes turn every challenge into an unpredictable spectacle. And when a real enemy attack shatters the station's defenses, the only hope might be the cadet who never plays by the book. The difference between an idiot and a genius is simple: a genius knows which rules to break, and why. Private First Class Murphy, Muff, Delgado didn't consider himself a genius. But he knew the rules at AUS Command Academy were broken, biased, and begging to be shattered. So, today, he'd help them along. By tying a black cloth over his eyes. The starting line of the Academy's infamous obstacle course, the Gauntlet, was a wide strip of polished deck plating, lit by glaring overhead lights. Dozens of cadets stood in rows, stretching and rolling their shoulders. They were the galaxy's best, hulking, rock-skinned Borgians, heat-shimmer Sinti, needle-thin Atolians with posture so perfect it looked painful. Muff was the only human in sight. Delgado. The voice came from somewhere to his left, a sound like water bubbling through metal pipes, overlaid with clipped, synthesized English. Lieutenant Clax's voice. Remove that ridiculous affectation at once. Or I will disqualify you immediately. Muff didn't turn his head. The faint beat of an ancient Earth rock song leaked from the battered music player on his belt. He gave a lazy two-finger salute toward the sound. Just leveling the playing field, sir. Wouldn't want an unfair advantage. A ripple of groans and quiet laughter moved through the cadets. Muff could feel their stares, some amused, most hostile. Clax's many limbs twitched. Your species' taste for melodrama is not a tactical asset. It is a liability. Muff grinned under the blindfold. Loud and clear, sir. The buzzer shrieked. The cadets exploded forward. Muff didn't move, not for a full second. He was listening. 20 species, 20 different footstep patterns on pressurized metal. The faint hum of plasma conduits along the walls. The sharp hiss of hydraulic pistons arming ahead. The song in his ears wasn't for fun, the steady beat gave him a framework. Every step, every breath, fell into a rhythm. Then he was moving. He didn't run like the others. He flowed. The first hazard, pressure plates that triggered piston strikes, sent other cadets leaping wildly. Muff planted a foot squarely on one plate and jumped with it, riding the piston's force over the whole row. Unorthodox. But effective. The Weaver came next, a crisscross of live plasma wires, glowing blue-white and humming with lethal voltage. Cadets crawled carefully beneath. Muff tilted his head, listening to their hum. Each wire had a slightly different pitch. He caught the rhythm, swung up onto the metal struts above, and moved through like a gymnast, never touching the floor. A sudden drop in air pressure tickled his cheek, a dart trap. He dropped flat, sliding as the flechettes whispered overhead. A zero-gravity section followed, the thruster jets in the walls hissed softly as they adjusted airflow. Muff listened for the echoes, calculating distance by sound alone. He bounced from wall to wall, moving faster than the cadets who relied on their eyes. The last challenge was a 10-meter wall. Others clawed at standard grips. Muff ran left, found a row of maintenance bolts by touch, and scaled them with fluid speed. He vaulted over the top and landed. A soft thud. Silence. Then the station's main display flickered, course time, 1 minute, 55 seconds. Previous record, 2 minutes, 14 seconds. Muff adjusted his blindfold. How'd I do, sir? Klax's tentacles recoiled like coiling ropes. He slid toward Muff, snatched the blindfold away, and found nothing but a strip of sweat-stained cloth. No hidden optics. No sensors. Report to my office. 0800 hours. We will discuss your future here, or the lack of it. The cadet stepped back as Muff walked toward the lockers. He didn't need eyes to know every one of them was staring. That night, Klax sat in his office, humid air wrapping around him like a wet blanket. He called up Muff's file, determined to find grounds for expulsion. He froze. Aptitude, Tactical Analysis, 99.8 percentile. Spatial Reasoning, 99.9 percentile. Threat Assessment, 99.7 percentile. Psychological Profile, Aberrant, Nonlinear Problem Solver. High Tolerance for Chaos. Recommended for Unconventional Warfare Division. Klax's eyes narrowed. This wasn't luck. He cross-referenced the file. A name jumped out, Corporaline Solve. Human. Washed out last year. Perfect record, until her final test, a hostage scenario built by Atolian tacticians. A scenario later flagged for unfair anti-human biases. Muff's blindfold stunt wasn't just a prank. It was a statement. Revenge for his friend. In the mess hall, Muff kept the blindfold on. Stubbornness, mostly. He traced the serving line by touch. Is this nutrient paste or nutrient slurry? Slurry gives me gas. A calm, dry voice echoed in his head. It is paste, Earthman. The slurry is to your left. High sulfite content today. Ill-advised. Muff smiled. Thanks, Glorban. Glorban was a humanoid colony of telepathic mycelium, riding a floating disk. Muff had accidentally cured a blight on its homeworld, by sneezing near them, and Glorban had been his shadow ever since. A heavy shadow fell across Muff. The deck trembled with a low growl. Human. Your stunt in the gauntlet disgraced us all. The voice was deep, rocky, a Borgian cadet. Muff smelled stressed minerals in his hide, heard the rasp of dry breathing. He fished a packet from his pocket. You sound dehydrated, big guy. Electrolyte tab. Take it. The Borgian froze, utterly unprepared for kindness. He took the tab and left in confusion. Glorban drifted closer. Fascinating. You have weaponized anticlimax. Klax's office. Your record is noted, Klax said flatly. So is your insubordination. From this moment forward, you will be held to the highest standard in this academy's history. One misstep, and you are gone. Understood? Muff's grin faded. Understood, sir. Klax watched him leave, tentacles still. Somewhere deep inside, against all reason, a small part of him wondered if the human was right, maybe the rules really were broken. In a lab filled with wires, coffee mugs, and half-assembled tech, Dr. Tula Knox grinned at her console. She was the Academy's chief simulation architect, and chaos enthusiast. On her screen was tomorrow's trial, a hostage negotiation with AI-controlled pirates. Boring. Predictable. She inserted a hidden code. Now, if the cadet tried to negotiate, the pirates would see it as an insult and execute the hostage instantly. All right, Muff, she whispered. Let's see you talk your way out of something you're not allowed to talk about. The simulation room was dark except for the dull red glow of the active holoprojectors. Muff stood on the bridge of a battered corvette, or rather, its perfect holographic recreation, swaying slightly to the rock track playing in his headphones. Glorban hovered behind him, translating his thoughts into calm, measured transmissions. The pirate captain loomed over the trembling ambassador. A Druze, massive and tusked, armor plates bristling with spikes. His plasma rifle was pressed against the hostage's head. One more word about reasonable terms, he snarled, and I decorate this bulkhead with his brain matter. Muff didn't answer. He cocked his head, listening. The captain's breath was ragged. His crew shuffled behind him, armor creaking. They were stressed, maybe hungry. He leaned toward Glorben. Ask them if they've eaten lately. The mycelium pulsed in bemused disbelief. Unorthodox, but expected from you. The telepathic query rolled out across the bridge. The pirate captain blinked. Did he just ask if we've had lunch? His crew muttered in confusion. The simulation's AI flagged the moment. This was not in its predicted flowchart. Muff didn't wait for an answer. Glorben, where's their galley? 37 degrees left, past the crewman with the vibrating dagger. Standard G9 nutrient synthesizer. Muff walked right past the armed pirates. His hands moved over the panel, guided by Glorben's voice. Let's see, reconstituted protein base, yeast extract, bit more salt. Needs to simmer. Good soup takes patience. The pirates watched, weapons lowering almost unconsciously. The simulation's logic engine scrambled. The program had been built for intimidation, negotiation, or violence, not communal cooking. It searched for an applicable cultural protocol. The closest match, Type 8 communal food preparation, gesture of goodwill. The captain grunted. Fine. But if it's bland, he gets spaced. A minute later, the entire crew was standing around Muff, bowls of steaming imaginary stew in their hands. The hostage was forgotten. A notification popped up in Muff's HUD, simulation complete, hostage secured, score, 100 out of 100, method, gastronomic diplomacy. From the observation deck, Dr. Knox was grinning so wide her cheeks ached. Beautiful data, she whispered. He bypassed the entire logic tree. The AI had no idea what to do with him. Klax's tentacles flexed in irritation. He made them soup. Yes, Knox said. And it worked. The next day, Muff stood in the mech hangar. Above him loomed 5 Atolian Warhawk assault mechs, sleek and deadly, bristling with cannons and missile pods. Their pilots, the Academy's top cadets, sat in cockpits linked to targeting AIs. Muff's ride was parked at the far end, a squat, 2-legged utility mech used for hauling cargo. No armor plating. No weapons. Just hydraulic gripping arms and thrusters. This seems fair, Muff muttered. From the observation deck, Glorben's dry voice filled his mind. The probability of survival is 0.034%. This does not account for Muff logic, which renders the data unreliable. On the far side of the deck, Dr. Knox's fingers flew over a console. Safety limiters are boring, she murmured. With a few keystrokes, she boosted the Warhawk's weapons output by 150%. The recoil would wreck their aim, but oh, the chaos would be glorious. Klax's voice echoed over the loudspeakers. Trial begins now. The Warhawks powered up, energy reading spiking. Muff flicked his music player to maximum volume. Distorted electric guitar roared out across the open comm channel. The Atolian pilots flinched. Their mech-sensitive audio pickups were instantly overloaded. What is that noise? One shouted. The lead pilot is experiencing what I believe you call a tantrum, Glorben observed. Targeting is suboptimal. You may proceed. The Warhawks opened fire. Plasma blasts tore through the hangar, scorching walls and filling the air with the sharp tang of vaporized metal. Muff didn't run away, he charged in, grabbing a dislodged wall panel with his mech's claws. 2 blasts slammed into the panel, turning it white-hot but absorbing the impact. They're flanking, Muff said. They are about to collide, Glorben replied. In 3, 2, collision. 2 Warhawks slammed together with a deafening crunch, their weapons sputtering offline. The leader overcharged his cannon. Muff shot straight upward into the ceiling superstructure. The blast missed and blew a gaping hole through the hangar's outer hull. Emergency field snapped on. Muff spotted the power conduit feeding the Warhawk systems. He clamped onto it with his mech's arms, and yanked. Every Warhawk went dead. Weapons, thrusters, targeting, gone. Trial complete, Victor, Cadet Delgado. Opponents neutralized without firing a shot. That evening, Clax replayed the footage 3 times. First, he saw luck. Then, stripped of the music, he saw the pattern. On the third watch, with sensor data overlaid, he saw it clearly. Muff hadn't fought their machines, he'd fought their senses. Overload the ears. Block the eyes. Remove balance. It wasn't luck. It was strategy. Clax shut the file. His tentacles were still, but deep inside, something unsettling took root, a grudging respect. Commander Year's voice was deep and deliberate. The Atolians demand expulsion, he told Clax. But I've authorized the final trial. I need to know what this human is made of, not his body, not his machine. His core. The Mindweave? Clax asked. Yes. Initiate it. Muff floated in the warm water of the sensory deprivation tank. A medic leaned over. You can take the blindfold off. It's pitch black in here. Nah, Muff said. It's my thing now. 2 obsidian-bodied telepaths from the Order of Undul settled opposite him, their consciousnesses extending into his mind. They expected calm mental landscapes, memories, fears, vulnerabilities to exploit. Instead, they found noise. Not random noise, a stadium concert. Muff's mind was a roaring rock opera, every sensation dialed to maximum. The crowd's cheer was a wave of psychic force. The guitar solo was a wall they could not climb. They tried to project fear. It became part of the song. They tried to induce panic. It became the drumbeat. Every attack was swallowed and repurposed. Minutes later, the telepaths ripped themselves free, reeling. One message appeared on the control room screen: subject's mind, weapon of mass disruption. Attempt physically painful. We are finished. The tank hissed open. Muff sat up, stretching. Wow. Great nap. In the control booth, Year allowed the faintest smile. Then the station shook with a deep, shuddering boom. Red alert klaxons blared. Breach in Sector Gamma, someone shouted over the comms. Multiple Corsair signatures. They're cutting through our defense grid. This wasn't a simulation. Another explosion rocked the station, sending ceiling panels crashing down. The air filled with the acrid bite of scorched circuitry. Muff grabbed the edge of the deprivation tank to steady himself as the deck lurched beneath his boots. Over the station-wide comms, a panicked voice cut through the alarms. Boarding parties in Sector Delta. Repeat, hostile boarding. Muff yanked his music player from the side of the tank, clipped it to his belt, and tightened the blindfold knot. Guess the day's not over. Glorbin's voice came calm and steady in his head. The corridors are chaotic. I detect multiple armed groups advancing toward critical areas. Your chances of survival, don't tell me the number, Muff said, jogging out of the chamber. It'll just ruin the surprise. He rounded a corner and dove behind an overturned supply cart as a volley of plasma bolts burned lines across the bulkhead. The smell of hot metal and burnt plastil filled the narrow corridor. 5 Corsair raiders advanced in tight formation, rifles spitting fire. Muff's earpiece crackled. Delgado. It was Clax, his tone more clipped than usual. Status? Pinned down, Sector F, Muff replied, shouting over the gunfire. Got a few unfriendly tourists here. Clax didn't waste time. I need a diversion. Now. Any kind. Any. Just make them stop shooting. Muff's head tilted. Beneath the chaos, he picked out a faint rhythmic whir, the automated food dispensers in the mess hall, just around the corner. Glorben, guide my hands. There's a power junction on this wall for the cafeteria systems, right? Confirmed. Muff ripped open a panel, sparks crackling against his knuckles. Now, hotwire the feed into the sanitation bot network. Weaponize lunch? Exactly. A shower of sparks later, the corridor filled with a roar of small motors. Dozens of spherical sanitation drones barreled out of the mess hall, spraying streams of overheated nutrient paste. The thick beige sludge splattered across the Corsair's armor, welding joints and jamming weapons. The 5 pirates froze into a single sticky, immobile sculpture. Muff grinned. Dinner is served. On the auxiliary bridge, Commander Year watched the security feed. Interesting, he murmured. Give him objectives, not orders. Nox, you're his eyes now. Feed him enemy positions and weak points. Klax's gurgle over the comms was tight but resolute. Understood, Commander. Muff, Nox's voice came through his earpiece, full of barely contained excitement. Corsair commandos are using the main ventilation shaft to bypass our checkpoints. If they make it through, they'll cut power to the defense grid. Where's the vent? Directly below you. And I just unlocked the manual controls. Muff found the hatch, slammed his palm onto a large red override button. A deafening whomph shook the floor as the airflow reversed. In the shaft, the Corsairs were blasted out the way they came, tumbling helplessly into open space. Objective complete, Muff said. What's next? Klax's voice came back almost instantly. Enemy command ship docked at Bay 9. Providing fire support to boarding parties. Nox cut in, her words quick. The gauntlet's right next to Bay 9. I can route every scrap of spare power into its hydraulic pistons. Do it, Muff said. The control room of the gauntlet lit up like a festival. Muff flipped every switch he could reach, setting the massive wall pistons to fire in perfect sequence. Thud. 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 The pounding rattled through the station's frame, straight into the docking clamps of the Corsair ship. The constant shockwaves scrambled its targeting sensors and sent crew stumbling on deck. In that moment of confusion, Academy defense craft swarmed in, hammering the Corsair hull until it broke free and tumbled away, retreating with the rest of the fleet. Silence, except for the hiss of emergency fire suppression. In the battered hangar bay, Commander Year stood facing Muff, Klax, and Nox. Smoke drifted above their heads in lazy spirals. The Atolian Empire has issued a formal apology, Year said. Earth Command has sent its congratulations, and its regrets about Corporaline Solve. That simulation is being decommissioned permanently. Muff stood still, breathing hard. You've won, Delgado, Year said. On every front. The battle's over. He gestured at Muff's face. You can take off the blindfold now. Muff reached up with both hands. His fingers touched the edge of the cloth. He adjusted the knot to make it more comfortable, but didn't untie it. With all due respect, Commander, he said, voice calm and steady, the universe makes a lot more sense this way. 3 days later, the Academy mess hall was back to normal, more or less. Cadets from half a dozen worlds moved through the lines, chatting in their own languages. Muff sat with Glorben at their usual table, a tray of nutrient paste in front of him. His blindfold stayed on. You know, Nox said, sliding into the seat across from him, you're the reason I'm about to be in serious trouble with half the command staff. Glad to help, Muff said, taking a spoonful of paste. They think I rigged the simulations for you. She smirked. Which I absolutely did. But you were supposed to fail, Delgado. Yeah, well. Maybe next time don't put soup on the table. Nox leaned in, eyes bright. Next time. You're assuming there will be one. Come on, Muff said. You and I both know they can't resist. Clax's office was dim, humidity wrapping around him like a tide. He sat before his console, replaying battle footage. In every clip, Muff wasn't following orders, he was following the problem. Always sideways, never predictable, but somehow effective. Clax paused the feed. The still frame showed Muff mid-stride, blindfolded, head tilted slightly as if listening to something only he could hear. The lieutenant let out a slow breath. This is going to be complicated. But the academy had bigger problems than complicated cadets. Weeks later, during a routine patrol near the asteroid belt, an encrypted transmission reached Commander Year's desk. The image was grainy, the voice distorted, but the message was clear: we know about your human. The transmission repeated twice before the signal died, leaving only static. Commander Year leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowed at the empty comm screen. His claws tapped a slow rhythm against the armrest. Source? He asked quietly. Unknown, replied his comm officer. We triangulated a general region, uninhabited asteroid cluster, edge of Corsair-controlled space. No known relay stations. Year's jaw tightened. Send it to my personal console. And say nothing to the council. Meanwhile, Muff was back in the Gauntlet control room, this time not as a competitor but as a guide. Knox had roped him into calibrating new obstacle timing. Why me? Muff asked, leaning casually against the console. You broke every record in here blindfolded, she said, tapping on her datapad. If it's tuned so you can't beat it, it'll give everyone else a fighting chance. Or, Muff said, you're using me as free labor. Knox grinned. That too. Glorben floated near the ceiling, filaments twitching lazily. The probability of you not triggering at least one catastrophic malfunction today is low. Appreciate the vote of confidence, buddy, Muff replied. Half an hour into testing, the Gauntlet's alert lights turned from blue to flashing amber. Knox frowned. That's not part of my program. Clax's voice came over the internal comms, sharp and clipped. All personnel, report to secure briefing room 2. Now. The room was packed with senior staff, tactical officers, and a handful of chosen cadets. Year stood at the front, the mysterious transmission frozen on the holoscreen. The distortion warped the figure's outline, making it impossible to tell species or build. Knox's eyebrows shot up. That's creepy. The playback began. We know about your human. Murmurs rippled through the room. Muff sat in the back, one boot propped against the chair leg, head tilted as if listening for a second message buried under the first. Year silenced the chatter with a single raised claw. The sender's identity is unknown. The timing suggests this came from the same sector our recent Corsair engagement originated. We have reason to believe this is not a bluff. Clax's tentacles curled slightly. They could mean any human. No, Knox said quietly. They mean him. All eyes turned toward Muff. Look, Muff said, I'm flattered, but if they're sending me fan mail, I'd prefer snacks. Year ignored the remark. We're deploying a recon team to locate the source. Delgado, you're on it. Muff straightened. Why me? Because if they really do know about you, you're the best bait we have. The recon ship Vigilance slid into the asteroid cluster under minimal power, its hull dark to avoid sensor sweeps. Muff sat in the co-pilot's chair, blindfold still in place, fingers tapping in time with whatever was playing in his headphones. Across from him, Knox monitored the passive scanners. Glorben had been installed, reluctantly, into a side station's comm interface. This is too quiet, Knox muttered. Correction, Glorben projected, it is exactly quiet enough for an ambush. The first shot came from a concealed turret mounted in an asteroid's shadow. The blast skimmed the Vigilance shields, lighting the cabin with a brief, hellish glow. Evasive. Knox shouted. The pilot threw the ship into a corkscrew dive between two tumbling rocks. Muff's head tilted. 3 more turrets, one low, too high. Fire on my mark, now. The ship's return fire blasted the hidden emplacements before their targeting systems could adjust. Knox glanced at him. How the hell? The vibrations, Muff said simply. Different rock density where the gun barrels are drilled through. They followed the trail of destroyed turrets to the largest asteroid in the cluster. A docking bay yawned open, lined with flickering red lights. Inside was a chamber big enough to hold a corvette, lit by grimy overhead lamps. The air smelled faintly of oil and scorched ozone. A dozen figures stood waiting. Pirates, but not the usual corsairs. Their armor was mismatched, scavenged from half a dozen factions. At their center stood a tall, hooded figure. "You're Delgado," the figure said. The voice was smooth, deliberate, and human. Muff froze. "You've been making quite a name for yourself," the stranger continued. "Blindfolded cadet who outthinks Atolians, tricks AI warlords, and humiliates the corsairs in their own raid. That kind of talent," the hood tilted, "is wasted in the academy." Knox stepped forward. "Who are you?" "I'm the one who can tell you what really happened to Corporaline Solve." Muff's jaw tightened under the cloth. "You've got 10 seconds. She didn't fail her final test. She passed. Better than anyone before her. And that terrified the Atolian tacticians who built the simulation. So they altered the records, scrubbed the data, and called it a failure." "That's not possible," Knox said, but her voice lacked conviction. "It's more than possible," the stranger replied. "It's standard practice for the Academy's political games. You think you're here to learn. You're here to be measured, weighed, and kept under control." The hood turned toward Muff. "But you're not controllable. And that makes you dangerous. To them. And to us, if you choose wrong." The pirates around the hooded figure shifted, restless. Muff could hear the faint scrape of boots, the whine of charging capacitors in their rifles. "So what's the pitch?" Muff asked. "Walk away from the academy. Work for us. We don't care about rules, only results. You'll have resources, freedom, and a chance to burn the people who buried your friend." Knox's eyes darted to Muff. The hooded figure extended a hand. "Choose, Delgado." For a long moment, Muff didn't move. Then he reached up, and adjusted his blindfold knot. "With all due respect," he said, "I don't shake hands with people I can't see. And I'm not done breaking their toys yet." Without warning, he stamped down hard. The hollow clang echoed through the bay, a prearranged signal. The Vigilance forward guns lit the chamber with blinding light as Marines rappelled from hidden hatches. Pirates scattered in panic. The hooded figure didn't retreat. He simply stepped back into the shadows and vanished. Back aboard the Vigilant, Knox stood in a hatchway as the docking bay sealed behind them. "You know you just turned down the chance to blow up the whole academy, right?" "Yeah," Muff said. "But blowing it up's too easy. I'd rather fix it, my way." Glorben hummed approvingly. "I foresee a period of sustained chaos." "Good," Muff said, leaning back in his seat. "That's my specialty." The Vigilant docked at the Academy's upper hangar under heavy guard. Commander Year was already there, claws clasped behind his back, eyes locked on Muff the moment he stepped onto the deck. "You found them?" Year asked. "Found someone," Muff replied, brushing dust from his jacket. "A hooded human, leading a pirate crew. Says Einsolve passed her test. Says the Academy buried it." A murmur ran through the gathered officers. Year's expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed. "And you believe him?" Muff tilted his head. "I believe he wanted me angry. Which means there's at least a grain of truth in it." Knox crossed her arms. "We have to check the archives." "Already on it," Year said. "But right now, we have another problem. The Corsairs are massing a fleet on the edge of our defense perimeter. They're coming here, and they'll bring every ship they've got. An hour later, the Academy's war room was a swirl of holographic star maps, tactical overlays, and frantic voices. Red icons flooded in from the far edge of the display, Corsair signatures, dozens of them. Klax's voice was low, steady. Our defense grid will hold, for about 6 minutes. That's not long enough, Nox said. Muff sat on the edge of the table, listening to the voices, the faint hum of the hollow projectors, the pattern of footfalls on the deck. We don't need long enough, he said. We just need unpredictable. Yer looked at him. Explain. Corsairs fight like everyone else, big pushes, focus fire, break the line. We break their pattern, they can't coordinate. And if they can't coordinate, we pick them apart. Klax's tentacles flexed. And you propose, what? Muff grinned. Let me run the defense. Nox feeds me sensor data, Glorben runs comms interference, you give me authority to move assets wherever I say, whenever I say. No explanations. Just trust me. Yer's gaze lingered on him for a long moment. If you fail, you get to tell everyone you were right about me. The battle began at dawn cycle. The Corsair fleet dropped out of warp in a formation like a closing claw, their lead ships pounding the defense grid with heavy plasma. From the command platform, Muff's voice cut across the tactical net. Okay, everyone, time to make them dizzy. Gunboats, break formation and scatter. Cruisers, fall back 50 clicks and drift, no engines. Make them think you're dead in space. Klax hissed. That's insane. You're giving them the field. Trust the process, Tentacle Tango, Muff said. As the Corsairs surged forward to swallow the retreating cruisers, Muff called, Nox, feed me the position of their comm relays. Sending now. Fighters, on my mark, dump your entire missile load into empty space at grid 7-4. There was a beat of confusion, but the fighters complied. The explosions ripped through nothing, except the Corsairs' encrypted comm lasers, which happened to be invisible lines running straight through that grid. Glorben's voice was calm. Enemy communications disrupted. They are now screaming at each other on open channels. Good, Muff said. Now we dance. What followed wasn't a battle so much as a brawl in a dark room. Muff kept the Academy ships in constant, erratic motion, slipping through gaps, feinting retreats, and ambushing isolated Corsair vessels. Nox fed him constant updates, frigate moving in on Sector 9, send 2 gunboats and a garbage scow. Cruiser venting plasma, ram it into their carrier. Slowly. Make it creepy. Klax, to his own astonishment, found himself executing Muff's orders without argument. And to his greater astonishment, they worked. By the 30-minute mark, the Corsair fleet was fractured into pockets, each cut off from the others, each convinced they were the last survivors. The turning point came when Muff's voice dropped into a calm drawl. Nox, remember those gauntlet pistons? You didn't. Oh, I did. Redirect all available power to the outer station struts. Klax's tentacles twitched. What will that? The station shuddered as massive piston-driven shockwaves rippled through space, invisible to the eye but playing havoc with Corsair inertial dampeners. Ships spun off course, crews thrown into bulkheads. All units, Muff said, mop up. The last Corsair ship limped into warp at a crooked angle, trailing debris. Cheers erupted across the tactical net. Yer stepped forward on the command deck, his deep voice cutting through the noise. All stations, secure from battle. Well fought. He turned to Muff. You've just done what no simulation could have prepared us for. Muff shrugged. That's the point. Later, in the quiet of the debriefing chamber, Yer placed a sealed data slate on the table in front of Muff. The truth about Corporaline Solve, Yer said. Unedited records. She passed. The Atolians falsified her results. We couldn't prove it at the time. Now we can. Muff ran his fingers over the slate, then slid it back. Keep it. Fix the system so nobody else gets buried like she did. You could walk away, Year said. After today, you could go anywhere. Muff adjusted his blindfold. Not done yet. In Klax's private office, the Sepid sat staring at a still image from the battle, a human cadet in the center of a hurricane of ships, smiling like the chaos was his home. His aide hesitated at the doorway. Sir, do we promote him? Klax didn't look away from the image. No. We let him keep thinking he's just breaking the rules. That's when he's most dangerous, and most useful. The academy returned to its routines. Cadets trained, instructors drilled, and in the mess hall, Muff sat with Knox and Glorben, arguing about whether nutrient paste could be improved with hot sauce. From the far side of the hall, a young Borgian cadet watched him with wary respect. A Sinti shimmered slightly when Muff laughed. The legend was growing. Knox leaned closer. So what happens when that hooded guy comes back? Muff grinned. Then I show him why you never play chess with someone who thinks the board's just a suggestion. Glorben's filaments pulsed with dry amusement. The great cleansing will be entertaining. Muff raised his cup of paste. To chaos. They clinked cups. Far across the sector, in the shadows of an unmarked station, the hooded human stood before a star map peppered with glowing markers. He reached up, touched one, the academy's location, and let his hand rest there. Enjoy your victory, Delgado, he murmured. The real game's about to start. The stars around the marker shifted, aligning into a pattern that looked disturbingly like a noose.